To make your waistband, the first thing you need to do is make your belt straps. So for a cargo pants jogger trouser, this is the way you make your belt strap. You fold it by ½ inch on both sides, then you make a final ½ inch final folding, then you sew on the edge of the final folding. So you do that for a piece you've actually cut to be as long as possible, because you just need to make that sewing once and for all, after which you will just cut to your desired height for your belt straps. So as you can see, I'm making my foldings on both sides, then I'm sewing on the edge of the resultant folding. So just to make sure I have enough, I'll be making another folding and sewing on the edge as well. I'm done sewing, so I'll be cutting my belt straps to be 4½ inches high. So that 4½ inches mark will be what I'll use to cut other belt straps. So I'll just cut as much as possible. I normally use 6 belt straps for a waist that is not up to 44 inches. I'm done preparing the belt straps, so I'll go straight to the fixing of the waistband. But before I do anything, I have to cut anything outside that zip to be lower than the normal position. So just make sure it is like a 1/4 inch lower, because you don't want it to be higher than the overlapping waistband. So that's just that for that. So after I finish trimming that, I'll go straight to the markings of the positions I'll be putting my belt straps. So it is pretty easy. The minute you know the center point of your trouser, you just know where to mark. So that ½ inch mark after that zip point is actually the center point. So you just take 3 inches to your left like that. Then you go to the other end of the waistline and mark 3 inches as well. So after marking 3 inches on that point, you divide what is left in between both 3 inches mark, and that will be your last position for the fixing of your belt straps for each side. The distance between each 3 inches mark is 11 inches. So 11 inches divided by 2 would be 5½ inches. So I'll just mark 5½ inches, and that will be the final position. So 3 inches from that half point, 3 inches from the other end, then 5½ inches from those 3 inches mark. And that is how you would also mark the other part. For the other part, the center part is actually the beginning point. There is no ½ inch mark like that. So since I took 3 inches here, I would also take 3 inches, but this time I'll just start from the end like that, and I'll mark 3 inches on that side. So after marking 3 inches, I'll come to the other end of the waistline, and I'll also mark 3 inches. Then I'll divide what is left in between both 3 inches mark, and it should give me 11 inches. So 11 inches divided by 2 would be 5½ inches, and that is how you mark your positions for your belt straps. So it all depends on the size of the waist. If the waist is bigger than this, you have to improvise to make your belt straps more than 6 belt straps. The next thing will be the fixing of the waistband. For the waistband, I added interface, which is actually called gum stay. It is a little bit harder than the light interface you usually add. So this is 1½ inches high. So you could see I left ½ inch sewing allowance on the down line, then a much more bigger allowance on the upper part, which I folded with my pressing iron. So to start fixing, I'll fold that end by ½ inch like that. Then I'll place on the end part of my waistline and start sewing. I'll sew to the point I actually joined the trouser to the flap, then I'll stop. So you could see the excess of the waistband. I have an excess of 8 inches. So that would determine how big the protruding part would be. So when I get to the part that joins the trouser to the flap, I would stop. So I have stopped on that position. Then I will decide how high I want my protruding part to be. So that protruding part, I will just work with 2.5 inches. So if I'm working with 2.5 inches, it actually means I'm working with 5 inches, because 2.5 inches will be folded on both sides. So I'll just mark 2.5 inches after folding like that. Then I will start, or I will continue from the other side. I'm actually continuing on the exact position I stopped. So I will start fixing my belt straps underneath the waistband as I sew along. So when I get to every position of the belt strap, I'll raise the waistband a little bit higher and fix the belt strap. So I'll fix the belt strap underneath the waistband, and I'll do that up until the end position of the waistline. You could see I gave 3 inches before the end of the waistline. It is because I know the sewing allowance for the end part of the waistline is not actually up to 3 inches. So when I get to the end part like that, I'll stop sewing and I'll cut. So I'll work on that protruding part now. I'll show you how it's done. So the first thing you do is your interface will serve as your guideline. So you sew from that end to where you actually stopped. So you stop at that point you started again, then you cut, then you open up that excesses like that. After opening up the excesses, you turn to the other side so you can see clearly. Then you sew now up until the end, but before you get to the end, you have to fold the upper part by 1/2 inch like that. But you just make sure your folding lines of the upper and the lower waistband you are sewing together is in alignment. That is why we actually use our pressing iron to bend that upper part so the lines can be visible. So you just sew both together like that. Then when you get to that part, you just stop. So what you've actually done is creating a rectangular protruding part of our front part of the waistband. You can make this diagonal, you can make it an arrowhead, whatever shape you want, even a circular shape. So the first thing I'll just do will be to cut off the excesses, and you can see where I start cutting off the excesses. I made sure it doesn't affect every other part. If you are not sure, you can just go 1 inch. So to make that diagonal end, you can stitch diagonally like that, and you actually get arrowhead shape. But for this one, we're actually working on a rectangular shape. So I'll make use of my scissors to push out all protruding edges to make the rectangular shape as sharp as possible. So after doing that, I've actually succeeded in creating the first part of the waistband. So this is actually the waistband. The next thing I will be fixing will be the band. So you could see it's actually two different things. I'll fix the waistband, then I'll fix the band. So I'll just cut off the excesses on the end like that. So I'm not doing anything on the belt straps until I fix the band. So to fix the band, I'll show you what needs to be done. But before that, we'll actually fix the waistband of the other side, and we'll just follow the same process we did while fixing for the first part. We are done fixing the waistband. Now we'll fix the band. So you could see some color dent on the fabric. So when you're actually cutting, you have to look out for those color dents. So you make sure those color dents are reserved for the making of the band. So this band will actually be the inner part of the trouser. So all those color dents would not be visible outside the trouser. So I just reserve them for the making of the band. So you fold into two like that and you make your stitch. Now, we only make this kind of bands for cargo trouser or native trouser or traditional wear trousers. For your suit trouser, you don't actually use this kind of band. You buy your ready-made band. So there's a way you fix your ready-made band. So this is actually somewhat what you call a jungle trouser or a rugged trouser. So that is how you make bands for these kinds of trouser, because everything just matches inside and outside, unlike that of your suit trouser where you have to work with your lining and other accessories that requires careful fixing. We are actually done with the sewing of the band. So what I will just do will be to push it outwards using the scissors like that, and after which I'll go to the pressing table and press. Let me remind you, the trouser is actually made in parts. So the cutting, the sewing of each part of the trousers were done on different videos. So check out the complete video. So we are done pressing, and that is the result of what we got. So you could see the edges, the joining part is the down part, and that will be the part that will be on the down line. So the other part will be the part that will be on the upper part. To join is really easy. So to join, what you just do is you place the upper part of the band ½ inch away from the edge of the folding. So you just place it half or ¼ inch away from the edge of the folding. So it just depends on how big the band is. So if the band is not too big, you place ½ inch so it can cover the down part. But if the band is big enough, you can just place it at ¼ inch away from the folding line, and that will be more than enough. All you just need is a space between the folding line and where you actually start the placement of your band. So you just sew on the edge of your band like that. So like I was saying earlier, every part of the making of this jogger pant cargo trouser is on the channel. So I actually published all the videos sequentially. So I started from the cutting of the trouser up until this point. So you could check the cutting of the trouser, the making of the cargo pocket. So for the pocket, one pocket was actually designed with a zip. So you could check how I did that also. So that's just that for that. And to continue the sewing process, when you get to the end, you just stop, and after you stop, you cut off the excesses of the band. Then I'll show you what to do next, because what you do next is actually a little bit technical, because you don't have to just sew to the end. So when you get to the finished part like that, you fold the sewing excesses inwards like that, use the band to cover it up, then you cut the excess of the band. After cutting the excesses of the band, then you fold to meet the position of the flap. You fold inwards like that, making sure both the upper and the lower part of the folding are on the same line. So when you make your stitches, it actually catches the down part as well. So after folding and making sure the sewing excesses is inside the band, you make your top stitches on the edge of the joining of the band and the trouser. So you could see I started from that top like that. Then I'll continue the sewing on that space in between the joining of the band and the trouser. But as you can see, I'm making sure the sewing line is actually inside the band. and the sewing line must face upwards, not downwards. So the sewing line must face upwards. Then you sew on that space in between the joining, so the sewing doesn't even show at all. So on that invisible space, you make your stitches. Then your stitches will not actually get to the end part because you still need to join the band of both sides together. So you still need to join the band and the waistband of both sides together. So you stop on a position like 4 inches before the end. You make your double stitches and you stop. For the other part that contains the protruding part, to do anything, you push the protruding part back inwards. So after pushing it inwards, you place your band on the excesses of the top part like that. Then you start your stitching. So you just place your band, and the position you actually place your band is technical because when you are making your final flap stitch, it should be able to cover your band. So you just place your band as inwards as possible. So that's just the trick. Just place your band as inwards as possible. Then you maintain your quarter or half-inch space away from the folding line, like I explained earlier. Then you make your stitch all through. So we are done with that. So as you can see, the band is as inwards as possible, and our final flap stitch will actually catch the band. So the next thing we are doing now is actually to make our final flap stitch, and that would be what would actually hold the zip in position. So when you zip up, everything will be held firmly. One little trick applies when you are actually making your final flap stitch. Just make sure you don't sew anything wider than what you started with. So everything you sew should just be smaller than what you started with. So the size of your sewing should not be bigger, but should reduce as you go downwards. If you continue on that trajectory, you'll get a perfect stitch at the end of your sewing. When you get to the final part of that final flap stitch, you will try to separate both flaps. You must make sure the down flap is not underneath what you are sewing. So you try to separate it as much as you can. But one thing is for sure, the stitch will eventually catch the down part, and you should catch it only at the half-inch overlapping interval mark we gave when we started fixing one trouser leg to the other trouser leg. So that is the position it will actually catch the down part of the flap. But before then, just make sure you are that the sewing of the upper flap is not actually sewing on the down flap. After making our flap stitch, so this is what we actually got. So you could see what I was telling you, just make sure it is not bigger than what you start with. So that's just that. So next thing we'll be doing will be the sewing of the band to the trouser. We'll start the sewing from the beginning, then we'll sew up until 4 inches before the end of the waistline. After you stop 4 inches or 5 inches before the end of the waistline, the next thing is to get your actual waist measurement. So you place both together like that and you use a pin to hold it down. So what you just do now is you can just take the whole measurement of the waist from the beginning to the end, then you remove the excesses, or you mark that center point like that and take the measurement from that center point to the right and from that center point to the left. So it just depends on how you want to do yours. So I think that's what we'll be working with, from that center point to the right and from the center point to the left. So from that center point, I'll take the measurement to the right and you can see what I got. What I got is actually bigger than 16. So 16 is my measurement. 16 is the half measurement of 32. So from that center point again, I'll measure 16 to the other part and I will mark. After marking, it will be on that line that I will join both parts together, and I'll be showing you how to do that.